Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that means it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. And joining me, as always, it's the guy always making me late. It's my own little Sonic commercial buddy. It's Tom. How you doing, Tom?
Hello, friends.
We had our drive back video from Nashcon. Somebody compared it to a Sonic commercial, which I found to be the most accurate comparison ever, because the driver in that commercial is always frustrated with the passenger. I see many similarities.
It's kind of true. It's kind of true.
Yes. Also joining us this week, it's Paul Wagner. Paul, how you doing, buddy? It's good to have you along finally on the show.
Doing great, thank you.
We are very glad to have you on. Paul obviously is a huge fan, maybe the hugest fan. Tom, you're in the running here, but I don't think you can touch this guy.
No, I think he has more painted than I do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that right there.
Yeah.
Of the Spiderfang Grots, which is the main thing we're going to talk about tonight. When it comes to spiders and goblins and the intersection of therein, Paul is the man. Now, this is obviously
hold on.
Okay.
I don't know. So,
Go ahead.
we can save it for the main segment.
We'll save it for the main segment where you can argue. But
yeah,
here's what I'll say. Your Twitter name didn't involve spiders and spider grots for most of its existence, but I know Paul's did.
that's
So
true.
That's right.
there you go. I'll link Paul's Twitter down below. Everybody probably knows Paul's Twitter. You probably already followed him because he does the bit of the day. And it's a wonderful little game. How often do people actually guess it? Because you pick some obscure bits.
Dude, I drop
I've
knowledge all the time on Paul's bit of the day.
Yep. I've only had one bit that has not been guessed.
Really?
All
Just
right.
one.
What was that?
It was one that I couldn't get a photograph of really well. So I don't think it's really fair, to be honest. But every other one was guessed.
That's impressive, because sometimes you pulled out like something from like an old metal Archeon kit once, and just like, I mean, you're all over the shop, man. Your bits collection is extensive.
You would be amazed. Like the most ridiculous ones that I literally am just like, nobody's going to guess this one. Immediately answered. I literally have answers within a minute for the ones that I'm like, this is going to be really hard. Nobody's going to guess it.
Well, they're often so distinct. You look at that and you're like, what is that? No one is ever going to get this. And because it's so weird, it just sticks in a lot of people's minds. I mean, I know that happened with me with like I had to laugh. The Arachnarok company one. The tip of the gun. You posted that, and I obviously I'd been assembling them, but it was just such an unusual bit that actually looked like a Nurgle symbol. And so I remember like you posted it, and within like a minute or two, I got I responded, and then everybody's like, "Oh no, that's Nurgle." Da, 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 da. But it was just so distinct because it's a small weird piece. It doesn't seem to I don't know why they obviously they wanted a different tip of for the two different weapon types. For the War Scroll. It was just a very weird bit that I felt like fit into that unusual, remarkable thing. So
it's fun to find those too. There's a limit to the ones that are really, really interesting, but there's not a limit to the ones that people don't know. So it's pretty fun.
All right. So as always, we're going to talk about some Spiderfang Grots, and we're going to talk about both where they are, what we can actually do right now to make them work, and where we want them to go in the future. So that's going to be a good time. And I think we're going to bring some interesting ideas to the table, but we'll see. We'll let you be the judge of that. But first, of course, let's get to the news. So Tom, what do you got for the news for us today?
I can't bury the lead this week. Man, Forge World points got dropped today for the Exalted Demons and the new models. Kind of.
Kind of. Yeah, that's really the right way to say it. Kind of. They put out some new points. Oops, they're all wrong. Never mind.
They're like, well, we're just kidding. Nope, just fooled you. It was quite the debacle today, because they put out these points, and like the models that we've been wanting points for, like the Exalted Greater Demons, all had points. But then they were terrible points. And then,
well, let me just say, I think some of those are going to stick. Okay, like they said there was some muddled up.
They said the
Yeah.
new stuff was going to stick.
Yeah. So like the exalted greater demon points that are there, I think those are correct.
No, I agree. They're just terrible.
Yeah.
And then, and then
You're exactly right. Yeah. No, he's like, let's not mince words. Like clearly there was some that was wrong. The giant controversial one was the Morn dropping from 400 to 280, which is obviously wrong. Like everybody just lost their minds immediately. They were like, "Wah!"
you got to admit that's pretty amazing, though. Like
I
if they
mean-
wanted to troll, like if they wanted to do something to troll the community, that's the right thing to do.
Sure. Paul, what did you think of that when you saw here's my question. Paul, you saw the Morn at the hot 280. What was your initial response?
My initial response was that just can't be right. I mean, to be honest, I was off the internet for like 2 hours. And so between the time that it happened and the time that they released the information, that had already happened. Rolling back and I see 280 and I'm like, no, that's not right. And then immediately see, nope, that's not right. And then see 2 hours of outrage posted below it.
Oh, it was so excellent.
It was great. All first in June, all over.
Yeah, it was hilarious. And you know, the funny part here is that my response was exactly the same as yours, Paul. Like I read it and I said, "Oh, that's clearly wrong. Like they made a mistake."
Mhm.
Yeah, like
You know,
when
because
Go ahead.
duh. Duh. In no sane world does that happen. It just doesn't. Like it's not. It's not like perhaps it was just wishful thinking on me, but I turned out to be right. But the point is that like no rational person who's followed this game would look at that Morngul and go, you know what the problem is? It's 100 points too expensive. That's what's wrong. No. You know, come on.
what I was going to say is that when I saw it, my first response was, "Oh, they swapped the a 2 for a 4."
Sure.
And that like instead of what it was currently at, that it jumped up to 480. That's actually where I anticipated that it would land. Now whether that's going to be the case or not, we'll see. But I suspected that it was partially right. But we'll see. Only time's going to tell. No, the big one that jumped out to me, like a lot of people, obviously that was a big deal, but I saw that, and the first thing I went and looked, I was like, sale. Still 160.
Still 160. Yeah, that guy coming in, just sneaking under the radar.
Everybody's like, Morngul! And I'm like, sale!
Yeah, I mean, there was just some funny changes in there. Like, I think just to cover quickly on some of the changes, all of these are up in the air because who knows what's actually going to look like when we see the final one. I think some of them are probably right. I think some of them are probably wrong, but whatever. Like, I don't think in the end the Dreadmaw is going to drop 140 points. I think that probably feels
Oh no,
wrong.
that's an amazing.
That's a great
rule
model.
for that model.
Yeah,
I've played against that before.
at 300, that's a bit of you're going to see a lot of Dreadmaw suddenly ravaging tables.
Exactly.
But like,
Man, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, but some things I think are probably right. Like, I think the Bone Grinder Giant will come down to like 300. That's probably correct because he's overcosted as all get out at his normal price. He's not worth that. I think the Magma Dragon probably will go up to 600. Not that anybody was playing him at 520, but he is just like a ridiculously destructive model. I think things like
Colossal Squig.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if
60
is
points?
he worth is he worth upping 60 points? Probably not. He probably was fine where he was. The car, I hope but the one I hope is true the most. Like, why is the Skaven Warlord on Brood Horror going up? You know, again, all these are up in the air, so everything's going to change. Who
Sorry,
knows?
Vince. The most offensive one is Tamerkin.
Tamerkin, yes,
Who was terrible.
who is terrible at
Terrible
500 and awful at 680.
At
680,
completely unplayable.
like more expensive than Alariel. He's like kissing Archeon points.
It's just nonsensical.
Right. So, you know, I just think like there's no way that like obviously we're going to see a big move on a lot of these. I think they will move a lot of the points around. I think they will point more toward the new pricing structure. Now, let me say there are very neat little things in here. Like if the Demon Plague Toads, which used to be like 120 for 3, but moved to like some amount of cost for 1, they could be interesting buys at that 60 for 1, even when more expensive. You know what I mean? Like things like that could be Interesting.
like charge blockers and stuff like that.
Yeah, stuff like that.
I like that they're flavorfully moving towards, like, if they did do that, like buy one and then the max unit size is 7. Obviously, for like, you know, echoing like the Nurgle's numbers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, I thought some of that was neat. I don't know. I just looking across the numbers, I don't even know how to respond to some of these changes. What I want to know is, I want to know about the phone call that happened from Eddie, the community manager, when this blew up. And I could just see Eddie calling over to Forge World and being like, "Hey,
what's going on?
So you guys posted the points, right?" They're like, "Oh yeah, we got the points up." And he's like, "So was the Morgul supposed to be 280?" And they'd be like, "Oh no, that's not right. That doesn't sound right." Oh man, it would have been an epic phone call. Because they retracted, they posted a response that was like, "Oh, points are wrong," fairly quickly. Anyways, that epic kerfuffle happened today.
Yeah, I mean, the most sad part to me is, if all the greater demons are correct, which we have all the reason to believe they are, they're all completely worthless.
Well, but the question, I think, is if they're changing that many points, right?
Sure.
If they are, I mean, my main concern is always going to be the War Mammoth, because I own one.
Sure.
And I want to play it. And at the moment, it's just a ton of points, but it's the only model that has a Marauder Lord. It has a hero that's a Marauder on it. And I want him to be able to be my general.
He doesn't have a hero keyword.
Exactly, but he doesn't have the hero keyword. But he does have, in the fluff, he's a Marauder hero, and he has a command ability.
Right.
Yep.
So,
I mean, you're right.
Go ahead.
I don't know that needs to go up 80 points either. Right? Is that thing rocking tables at 320? Again, I'm not.
Clearly, it was on the top tables.
Yeah, absolutely. You didn't see a table without a War Mammoth. I was getting sick of them.
Well, Domus was running one at Holy Wars, and he was having a great time running everything over, and himself.
Well, don't get me wrong. I mean, War Mammoth was in our original list for Holy Havoc. So, I mean, I'd be lying if that wasn't the plan. But so I think they're playable. I just don't think that they're dominating. And so at 80 points more, I think they would really struggle. If they are going to do such a major adjustment, I would love to see a revision of the War Scrolls themselves. Yeah, there's a difference between Forge World models and AOS models. The problem with AOS models is I think they're reluctant to change the actual rules because they're printed somewhere. For all the Forge World stuff, it's all PDFs. It's all digital. And
I want to see the Merworm actually able to be fielded in an elf army. That'd be nice. I have one of those too, but it's sitting in a box still because I don't want to field it with my destruction.
Sure.
Well, yeah, the thing about that is they could do so much to make these actually appealing and make people want to buy them. Just get some good keywords on some of this stuff, align some of them with where they're supposed to be, where they make sense, give them abilities that somewhat synergize, point them at the right amount. They don't have to be, I'm not asking for a steal. In fact, I don't want them bargain basement. I don't want to feel like I've got to go be compelled to pay Forge World's prices, but I want to feel at least like it's an option to include this cool, awesome model on my table, right? And have it do something. Right now, so many monsters are just a total non-bow, right? Because they have no alignment with most of the armies when they're just sort of standalone monsters. But as I proved at Nashcon, if you staple the right keyword on something, I will throw points away.
It's true. It's true.
That Mutilith Vortex Beast couldn't hit the table fast enough as soon as they put Zeech on there. Just start slapping keywords around and I'll start spending money. It's that easy. It doesn't need to be well costed. So yeah, I'm just saying.
Although I will say that the Mutilith is fairly well costed at his 220.
No, he's fine. He's fine. So anyway, I look forward to seeing what the actual points are. It sucks about the Exalted Demons. I've been waiting on the Exalted Greater Demon points forever because I have the Exalted Kipper. And, she's probably one of the most worth it ones and still totally not worth it. Right? That is to say, she gets probably the most for her role out of any of them, except maybe the Great Unclean one, maybe the Great Unclean one. because they actually gain the full 5 wounds by going up to the Exalted, whereas the other ones just gain like a wound and a save. And you pay like 180 points for that over the normal Lord of Change and get a worse wound table.
And you don't get the gifts, right? Or can you put the gifts on those?
Well, that's really the question. Yeah, because they're all, that's the other problem. They're all, only one of these may be fielded in an army for reasons. I don't know. Like, why? Why in the world is that rule on there for the Exalted Greater Demons? Was that a problem? Were people buying too many, $250 Greater Demons and just, flooding tables with them? Get out of here. That doesn't need to be a rule on there. And yeah, so like I think I haven't went and looked at it because it's like named characters.
It says named characters. And so the problem is like, what is a named character? Like, there's no actual metric for what is a named character and what isn't. Other than we've associated, you can only field 1 per warband.
Well, wouldn't it make sense?
Right, and these all have... Go ahead.
Wouldn't it make sense to have a keyword that says this keyword means you can only field 1 or something like that?
They never did that.
Unique. Like, the obvious thing is to just have a unique keyword.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep. And then you don't have to have any rules or anything else. It's just right there on the keywords.
I completely agree. But they didn't go down that route. And so here we are. No, it's always funny to see like the disconnect between Forge World and GW. Like it's just from an outside perspective, it's just so fascinating.
Well, they're 2 different companies. I mean,
right.
That's the interesting thing is they're still under the GW umbrella, but they are a different company.
Right.
They're run completely differently, and
hence the phone call. The Eddie phone call that I wish I had. I wish I could have been a bird on the wall for that one.
Well, I'm actually.
I don't think you would have wanted to be a bird on the wall because then people would have been like, "What the hell is a bird doing in my office?" You're a bird. Yes. People notice birds.
Okay, a fly.
I think you meant fly on the wall.
Well, whatever. It doesn't matter. You get the idea. Way to be a dick, Vince.
You wanted to get swatted with a tennis racket. That's the end of that story.
Clearly. Ugh. Why am I your friend?
All right, so let's move on with some more news. And by the way, I want to give a special shout out to the comments. Reverend Dangles, who mentioned that my army was the pretty garbage at the tournament. I'm reading it like that, not pretty garbage, although both are true. What I like is the double entendre there. Yep and yep. It was pretty garbage and pretty garbage. So I'll take either way you want to read that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dangles.
I'm going to do the rumor mill next. In Clickbait Part 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, sure.
We got the other half of the cloak that we saw last week.
Yeah, right. Isn't this just more of the same cloak? It is.
Yes,
right?
They're panning up that cloak. And because you can see the cut here, like up at the top, that cut right there is the same cuts from last week.
Right.
In the actual, like...
it's flipped around the other side, I think, last week, right? Like the other one's from the front. Yeah.
Yes. So thanks, GW. A lot of people...
Isn't all of this just the skeleton from... Doesn't it look just like the skeleton from Shadespire?
It does. It does. A lot of people have said, maybe this is the White Lion release. No, it's not.
No.
What do you guys think this is? Do you think it's just a Shadespire skeleton?
I thought it was possibly Skaven before because they showed the Skaven tail and they showed the ragged cape. I thought it was possibly an Eshin release. But with showing the fur on the top, that's not an element that's currently in the Eshin design.
So can I ask a question?
Here, let me jump to this real quick. This actually has here on Adia, the person actually put in a picture of this skeleton, right? So it's clearly not the exact same cape, right? Because you can see where the arm comes out here on this. But so somebody has asked, is this the champion of a unit of skeletons that look all like this, that all have like big capes or capes of some kind and fur? And hence what they're spoiling is actually the unit, the death release that we're going to get that looks like that. Okay.
Maybe. So here's my question. Go back to the actual hangout or the actual rumor engine. So are those Do we think that that's fur?
Yes.
It looks like it to me.
I don't know. I mean, on one hand, like some of those look like the leaves of the Glade Guard.
Typically,
Okay,
they have
so-
a defined line, though.
And normally they do, but you can see the line in some of these down the middle. So that's the first thing I would say is, are we sure these are is this is fur? And the second thing I would ask is, are we sure those aren't tongues, and that this isn't a Slaanesh release? Just saying, a cloak of tongues.
That'd be a lot of tongues.
That would be a lot of
all,
tongues.
that's too much in Kingdom Death's territory, right? Like
That's
if this were Kingdom, like they don't. I mean this in no way bad to GW, but they don't have the cojones for that kind of a thing. Like I hope they surprise me someday, but it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't see a Slaanesh warrior wearing a ragged cloak. To me, really speak to it.
Sure,
but a cloak of tongues.
When I look at that fur, that looks like the same thing as what that is. Like this fur.
I'm just
looks
hoping
like
for
this.
something different and not the skeleton. Because basically that just looks like the skeleton to me.
It does kind of look like the skeleton.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably skeleton. Okay.
I mean, look, if they're spoiling an actual death box, like a new cool, some kind of elite skeleton box or whatever, that's awesome. Yeah. They'd make a lot of people very happy. Like the death players would be bouncing off the rafters for some sweet new elite like skeletons out of Shadespire. Yeah, sure. Sounds good to me.
Yep. Vince, you want to talk about TMS?
I do. So I've mentioned the Tabletop Miniature Solutions, TMS, the Kickstarter, previously. Today is basically we're in the last day of it. There, it ends, I'll give you the exact time. It ends Friday, June 9th at 10:29 Eastern. So I guess you have like a day and a half left. And it is funded. So it's well over its funding goal. He is adding a new model for every additional like $1,000 they reach right now. So the project will go with everything that they have in there. As I mentioned previously, the pledge levels are very generous. You know, you can get like one of the hero models.
Counts, right?
Yeah, basically vampire. Yep. So you can get like one of the heroes for $10 for your $10 pledge. You can get a whole unit for like a $25 pledge. The big monsters are like $60 for the giant monsters. And there's just a lot of really cool stuff. I have some of the TMS, what they did for the Tomb Kings equivalents. And they're really good. Like their resin, it's a nice solid resin. It's a very clean look. Now, obviously, most of what's in there when you go to the Kickstarter right now is just drawings. They do have some of the 3D renders. But, you know, my experience with them is that the final model looks pretty much exactly like their art. They have a very tight sort of production chain between their art, their sculptors, because they actually use sculptors. And then they're not necessarily digitally rendering everything. And then the production line. So it stays pretty consistent throughout, at least in all the things that I've seen them do. They also deliver really fast. The current delivery date for this is August and September 2017.
Wow.
So like 3 months.
And their prior delivery, they hit those numbers.
They hit those numbers. They were on time with all their deliveries. Yes. This is the fourth one they've done. They've hit their times. The first one they did have trouble, but I mean, that's usually the first one. For both 2 and 3, they landed on time. So, I mean, my point would be you're basically pre-ordering some minis. They do offer both square and round bases. So no matter what your particular pleasure, you can probably find a base to do it.
And they're pre-sculpted, right?
Yes, their bases are like pre-sculpted with texture and stuff. They're really cool, and they're pre-magnetized. So they're heavy bases. They're already magnetized, which I like a lot. So they're really very good stuff. Like I've been incredibly impressed by them. Like I said, it's a passion project of a very small team of incredibly dedicated people. So check it out. If you're looking for some new good death minis, if you're one of those people who's looking for some new death stuff, you know, this could be a place to look. I'll include the link down below. Go and check it out. I'm backing it. I'm just trying to decide whether I want to get the giant zombie dragon, or or pick up the Court of the Damned, which is sort of the new Coven Throne, which is a very interesting like dead dragon thing, or whether I want to pick up a couple of the other or one of the other like big monsters. They do big monsters like really, really, really well. He's also been unlocking like female versions of all the miniatures. So like the vampires on sort of terrors and female necromancers and female vampires and stuff like that. So super cool. Check it out. There you go. I'll put the link down below.
I'll say a vampire army tempts me. So as if I needed more armies. But yeah, it looks like a good delivery. Speaking of Kickstarters and other crowdfunding, I actually ironically got my models from the Lost Kingdom miniatures, the Indiegogo campaign, a year ago, 10 months ago, 11 months ago. They did a Chaos Dwarf release. They had like 300 and some backers. I didn't know when it was going to be delivered, so I just kind of wrote it off and forgot about it. And then like it showed up in the mail. Well, I've sold off all my Chaos Dwarfs. And the irony is that I opened it up and I'm like, wow, this is a really good sculpt. So they did a really good job. So if Chaos Dwarves are your thing and you're looking for some big hats and some alternative sculpts, go look up Lost Kingdom miniatures. They should be available for retail soon. So we'll have the link at least to the Indiegogo campaign, even though it's technically over. Or to the website, probably, if you want to track that down. And then other news. We have a number of events coming up in the very short future. Obviously, Vince and I just returned from Nashcon. That was a blast. We'll probably talk about it maybe in... well, anyways, that went well.
We'll talk about it at some point in the future.
At some point in the future. I don't know when. That went well. We'll go there. AOS Battleshock Bash is coming in 2 weeks, June 25th, 23rd through 25th, sorry, in St. Louis. It's part of the larger Gateway Open, which has like narrative stuff and a whole bunch of other events kind of wrapped up together. I'm sorry, let me start again. Coalescence is next weekend, is this coming weekend. And I need to mention that. Let me open with that. Find your local Coalescence event and get involved. And then Battleshock Bash is in 2 weeks in St. Louis. It's a 2K event. They still have spots. I want to highly encourage people to check that out. We'll have the link to that below. And it's funny because here in the Midwest, like stuff is just stacking up. In July 14th to 16th in East Peoria is the Midwest Meltdown. Domus is putting that event on. July 20th, then the week after that, July 21st to 23rd, Slobberknocker GT in Oklahoma City. And then in August, the next month, we'll have Nova Open at the end of August. So those events, just one after another here in the Midwest. And obviously Nova is not in the Midwest. That's over in the DC area. So
I mean, it's close enough.
That's a coast. That's not the Midwest. What else? Do you have any other news items?
No, I believe you've wrapped up all the everything there.
Yeah, there we go.
Cool. All right, rock on. Well, then, in which case, let's move out of the news and let's return to our pick of the week. So, Paul, what do you got for your pick of the week? What would you like to share with the audience? Video, podcast, blog, etc.
Well, my pick of the week is actually a blog called Tabletop Fix.
Nice.
I just use an app to track it, but it's a really nice blog because all he does is goes out and finds alternative sculpts, Kickstarters, whatever, posts pictures and says, hey, this exists, or hey, this is on sale now.
Nice.
It's just a great resource to be able to find a ton of stuff. Time to spend trolling. I used to actually do a lot of trolling to try and find all those releases. Reaper Mini used to do a weekly release where they'd show every new sculpt that they did. That frauthers.co.uk resource to see a bunch of new sculpts, and that's kind of gone away from it. And Tabletop Fix has pretty much filled that void for me, just because it shows you everything that he finds. Just post it up, really no comment. It's not a discussion, just hey, this is here.
Nice. As someone who's a big fan of alternate minis and stuff like that, I support this 100%. I dig that. I was not aware of it. Sounds like I'm going to have to add a new site to the rotation. All right, I dig that. Okay.
It's funny that you mentioned that. As an aside note, this may have been, maybe it should have been a news item. Reaper started shipping their Bones 3 Kickstarter this last week. And those are out in the wild now for those that are interested. I highlight them only to say there are a number of really interesting terrain pieces that came out of that Kickstarter that are definitely worthwhile. And these are available on the open market now. Let me see if I can grab one of these. One of them, for example, is the Mystic Circle, which is like a Stonehenge style terrain piece. And that Bones material is just perfect in the terrain size. So these can be found, and this is a huge, like, the total, if you see the base here, like, let's go back. Like, this is a big circle of these. So this would be a nice centerpiece. And these are probably, you can probably get these for like $20 on eBay or something like that. So there's that for Stonehenge. There's some like standing stone stuff. There was one of the expansions was a graveyard expansion, which had a huge mausoleum in addition to some gates and stuff like that, and a ton of tombstones and all that. And so that should be out in the wild, that you should be able to track it down on various like reseller sites until Reapers actually releases it later this year. So especially for those that are building Shadespire boards, some of that newer stuff is still pretty hot. That's available right now.
Yeah, the graveyard set is very much like the the mausoleum, like the Garden of Moor previously, right?
Yes.
And like they would integrate quite well to do a whole big massive board themed in that. I think you could really fill out a pretty massive table sized graveyard.
I actually did not initially buy the graveyard expansion, but when I saw that, when I received the rest of my Kickstarter, I went, you know what, with Shadespire out, I need that. So I went out and found somebody that was reselling one of those, paid the premium so that I could get it sooner rather than later. And I have actually one in the mail, headed here now.
Nice.
So
I just want the female cloud giant or whatever that's out of that. That's the one that I'm looking for. She's good. Yep. All right. So good pick. All right, Tom, what about you? What's your pick besides Bones?
Well, I'm never beyond shameless self-promotion. And so I'm going to promote a broadcast that Vince and I referred to earlier, which was our Sonic 90-minute Sonic commercial, where we reviewed all of Nashcon. Vince and I talked about our overall impressions in a road trip format video. And we reflected on all of our games. We walked through each round of the games and talked about our opponents and their lists and kind of the highlights of each of those events and stuff like that. So we did some mini battle reporting and just kind of talked around about just all of those fun things.
So I do have a serious question about that.
Yeah.
Hit me.
On the way down, you tweeted a picture and you had this huge case in your lap. You didn't seem to have a huge case in your lap, or at least you had a little bit more room. So what happened?
Oh, that's a great question, Vince. What happened?
Well, so on the way down, I had my 2 cases taking up the back seat, like directly behind me.
Dick.
And just said, screw you. Because like it was already packed, right? I was like, I'm not taking this apart. You're just fit. You got to hold it. On the way, when we left, right, he was like, wait, can mine fit in the back seat? And then I just hold your smaller case. And so we made that work. And then he had the much smaller case. Yes, it did.
So I didn't have to hold my huge set of like all of my minis for all of those hours on the way back. Yes. Excellent observation, Paul.
It's funny that you noticed that. And yeah, like, hey, well, now we know. So, we'll I'm sure if Tom and I are in the car again, we'll do that again. It'll be like, instead of comedians in cars drinking coffee, it'll be Warhammer nerds in cars discussing tournaments. So, it's a similar show, basically the same level of quality.
Absolutely.
I think.
Totally.
I think that our discussion in Seinfeld, I mean, you basically can't tell the difference. Yeah. Yeah, I was hoping you're gonna mention that and not the like 2 hour plus video of you with your shaky cam world star of our fourth video of our game
Oh,
that we
well,
played that's on your channel.
That is your pick, Vince, which was
Not my pick.
Vince
Terrible.
is referencing the fact that, for those of you guys that don't know, we played in the 4th round of the tournament. Oh, it was fantastic. And I live streamed it, and it was a mess. Like, I warned everybody from the very good. We did an entry interview where it was loud and like it was all shaky cam, and we were tracking dice rolls, and it was a horrendous event. But people begged for it, so we delivered.
It was a bad choice, and you got yourself stuck in portrait mode, so it was just total like world star the whole time.
Yes. Hey. I'll bet
awful.
Chai Hammer was proud of me.
I'm sure he's the man for just randomly going live at events. That is certainly true. He's not afraid to just kick on the camera anywhere while he's walking or doing anything. So yeah, I'll support that. Okay. For my pick of the week, I have a pick from Volomir's blog, who is somebody who does a lot of miniature painting stuff. And there was a really great article that recently went up there that was all about so Paul Bonner had done like this awesome sort of minotaur diorama from a classic piece of art that's like very the art again. Bonner. Okay. Paul Bonner. So anyway, it's sort of based on this. The miniature and the setting and the background are all based on this classic artwork. And he talks about how he brought it to life and how he painted it. And he walks you through like really, really, really step by step how he created this thing. And like each little layer of paint and glaze and stuff like that, it's really, really well articulated. And so for people who've come to me and ask about setting up dioramas or achieving sort of lighting and stuff like that, if you're interested in those sorts of things in your miniatures, this is an awesome blog entry for it. So I really, really liked it, and I want to share it with everybody. So check it out. I'll link that down below. All of this stuff will be linked down below. So, okay, cool. Well, let's turn to some hobby time. So, Paul, what are you working on, man? What's been on your table?
Well, actually, I've been working on a huge project for Coalescence. I actually finished assembly today. So it's
cutting a little bit close.
Actually, I'm actually pretty happy to have it actually finished.
Nice.
So the Coalescence event in Middleton is going to be called the Gibbering Dome. And I'll just give you a teaser because it'll be covered later on another podcast. But basically, the first battle is going to be half custom terrain. The second battle and the third battle will be all custom terrain.
Wow.
Including itself. Everything has been sculpted from scratch to begin with.
Nice.
In the last month and a half.
That's impressive.
That's awesome.
I would say it's impressive. Got it done. So now we're going to see if we can get some paint on it in the next 2 days. But it's quite a volume of material to paint because it's going to be 7 4x4 boards. So it's going to be run a little bit differently because I don't know. It's the event I wanted to run. Let's put it that way.
That's what Coalescence is.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, you run the event how you want, and it can have a more interesting narrative bent, and it doesn't have to play by the normal rules. That's the beauty of this. Absolutely. Well, that's cool. I assume there's going to be many pictures shared over the weekend. Then, okay. So for those who are following your Twitter, which will be down below, which I talked about at the top of the show, you can see all that awesome stuff in action. I dig it. Very good, man. I'll be watching to see how it turns out. Well, get out the big brush, get out them craft paints. Time to go to town. All right. Concrete spray paint. I stand behind that. All right. So, Tom, what do you got for your hobby time, buddy?
Well, obviously I just got back, like I seem to be like just all over the place. because I just got back and I did like 40 demons right before I headed off to Nashcon. I guess Nashcon fits into that hobby time. And then the demons. And so now that I'm back, I've cut a bunch of Fire Slayer bits out of the bits boxes. So I got a bunch of Fire Slayer bits. As I'm kind of thinking about the conversions, going to kind of lean in full tilt into my KO. I assembled my first chemists and did my conversions on him and primed him up, so he's ready to. And he's gotten a round of base coat stuff on him. So, and then I am working on. For those that have seen my display board, that 2x2 like section of Mire Guard with like the keep doors open. The plan is I have 3 other panels that are already built and being barked right now. And the idea is that I'm going to have a 4x4 board for skirmish done for that. Like it'll fit into a 4x4. And then hopefully not too long after that, I'm hoping to do the final 2 panels and do like a 6x4 plateau of like a huge dreadhold. And then what I'm going to do is it's going to be basically like a ruined dreadhold is the idea. So I'm hoping to like paint it up and have like a tournament ready table, like a high quality, like multi-tier dreadhold, like broken. So like the problem with dreadholds in match play oftentimes is they're just so big and they take so much space. And so the idea is that with this, you could spread out and have like broken ruins and stuff like that and be able to still get the feel of a dreadhold without it occupying every square inch of the table itself. So that's what I'm working on.
Awesome. I just want to see you make sure you return to the KO. Obviously, we hope to, I want to see you get those on the table sometime soon. So, but the board project sounds cool.
Yeah, I can glue here and there while like paint's drying and stuff like that. And so that's what I'm working on.
Sure. For myself, I am personally finishing up a piece for Gen Con for Rainbow Brush, specifically the environmental piece. So this is my base for it. You can see that's all done and good to go. The miniature
environmentalism is the theme.
Environmentalism is the theme. Yes, environmental conservation,
and that's a toxic wasteland. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Villain.
Yes.
Hey, look. I'm just the best points I think you can make about environmentalism are usually about the downsides of it. So, or like the dark sides of not doing it, I suppose what I'd say. But this was very fun to make using like just pieces of modern technology to format like a wasteland. If you can see like all the bits and things that are on there. Like I broke up some old computer stuff to make all the bits and then base the whole thing on like, you can tell there's like a CD that's actually the base of that to set that off the side. So fun stuff like that. There's been a lot of different things to do there. So the little mini is done as well. He's over here and it's all going to go together tomorrow. And I'm just waiting on some more stuff to do like a nameplate for the front, which I'll do tomorrow. Also, there's a little bit of a rough spot, so I have to resand and repaint that. But other than that, it's good to go. So that'll be done and it'll go up here probably in the next day or two. And then I don't know what I'm working on next. So we'll see. I'll figure it out this weekend, I suppose. But I'll be glad to have that project done. So let's turn to our feature segment, shall we? Let's talk about some Spiderfang. Now, the Spiderfang Grots for me have a very unique place right now in AOS. And that is this. I don't know if there's another sort of tiny subfaction that is both as small as this one is that has been mentioned as much throughout the fluff, right? Like these guys show up in a bunch of different books and stories and art.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say they keep showing up, but yet it's really like 3 models, right? I mean, if you get down right to it, and
I'd say 3 kits, but yeah.
What's that?
3 kits.
Yes.
Yeah.
3 kits. Correct. That is true. One of them can be 2 different things, Fair enough. There are 3 kits, and yet these guys keep popping up everywhere. And the reality is, a lot of people have a lot of love for them, right? Like, I think there is a lot of, I obviously you two are particular fans, but I think there's a lot of love out there in general for them. And when people saw like the little scuttlers or whatever out of, Silver Tower,
Yep.
people thought, oh, maybe this is in the same way that the sort of Tzeentch and the Zangor stuff heralded a release coming for that. Maybe this means we have a Spiderfang thing, but we've never seen that materialize, right?
No more so than the Eshin assassin.
Or the elf.
Or the elves, yeah. So, but what I would say is this, as kind of a follow-up on that, though, like, I think that they're in the lore more than I think most people realize.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do either of you have the Ever-Chosen battle tome?
I do not.
So, funny story. I picked up like the collector's edition on a good deal, cracked it open, and the entire campaign is Archaon versus Spiderfang. The whole thing. Like, that is front and center, the entire narrative campaign, with a bunch of Spiderfang specific scenarios about invading the nest. Like, it is a robust treatment of Spiderfang and of Spittlegit and of what happened there. And I'm like, what the what? Like, how is no one talking about this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, truly, Spiderfang are all over the place, tucked
I'm
away.
gonna have to pick that up. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's quite impressive.
But I have another different kind of serious note though. So I asked around just to find out. Ali Morrison and Alex Hedstrom sculpted the Arachnarok. Alex did the goblins and Ali did the spider. And if I'm honest, I think that Arachnarok kit is a large part of the reason why the subfaction number 1 got so much love in the War Scrolls and the rules writing. I mean, that kit is just absolutely fantastic.
Yep.
But number 2, as well as with the following that it has.
Yep.
Because the Arachnarok is one of those kits like they did with the Stegodon. They've done a couple other kits where you get a monster, you get troops, and you get heroes.
Yeah.
Everything for a whole army, if you really want it, in one box. And add that up to the fact that it's $60.
Yep.
Which is just an amazing, amazing deal. And as opposed to, for instance, the Stegodon kit, where it's a part of a much larger range, right? So you can throw the Stegodon in with whatever else you want to. The Arachnarok is very distinctly sculpted and match only the Spiderfang Grots.
Yep.
Only the ones on and especially that one-off sculpt of the hero on the gigantic spider, which I don't even know why that sculpt got made, apart from the fact that it's just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, I really don't know where the impetus came for. We have one kit of cavalry spiders, then let's just make a gorgeous hero for it out of metal, and we'll see how it sells. I mean, that to me just shows that there's somebody in the studio who's like, this is a really cool idea. And my inkling is going to lean towards Jeremy Vedok, but I literally have nothing to back that up, besides the fact that he ran a free-up cavalry spider with a bunch of little goblins on top of it in a battle report 2 years before the Arachnarok was released. It was one of those narrative battles, and so that's why I'm thinking that Jeremy Vedok might be the reason behind it, and he's just saying this is a really cool idea. Literally just one unit, and it's existed from 5th edition and back. It's just one of those things that's just apparently a very, very well-loved idea in the studio.
Well, yes, I agree.
Well, so let's start with exactly where we are now. We talked about the 4 kits. So, Paul, I'm going to turn it over to you. Like, let's start with, you mentioned the Arachnarok, and first of all, I totally agree with your appraisal of the situation. That Arachnarok, like, I have no great love of spiders. I've been very open about that. They creep me out, okay? But even I have to admit, it's a beautifully sculpted kit. Like, it's so well made, right?
Mhm.
And you're right about everything that's in there. Just the way you can customize it, the way that you can put the kit together, the different things you can do with it. You can make a part of terrain. How many times have you seen people do amazing things? That spider, repositioning it, having it crawling around on things, up, down, vertical, adding webs and having other things, goblins all over the place. You know, just like everything you can imagine, right? Because that kit inspires that sort of creativity. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, but in general, as that kit stands, let's talk about the 2 versions of it and what your thoughts on it are. We know the kit itself is awesome. What do you think about, like, rules wise, points wise, however you want to tackle it? You know, both versions of it. So that is to say, the
Can I
spider.
address something real quick?
Sure.
There's technically 3 versions of it.
Yeah, technically, this might be a little bit of a controversy, but I definitely agree with this.
Yeah, there's not 2, there's 3. And I know that people like if you look in the actual assembly, there are 3 ways to assemble this.
Mm-hmm.
There is with the shrine, there's with the catapult, and then there's with an enhanced howdah that carries it higher, the howdah higher with like a boss on top. And this is back in the if you guys remember, like when we talked about like the first kind of go around when we talked about this, like I really felt like they needed a melee hero. Even when we did a 9th Age review, I was like, you guys need to do big spider with a melee hero on top, because the kit already has it. Like it's built to do this thing and to have this thing, but there's never been any rules around it.
Well, and also to further that point, the points are different, right? Like the catapult was free, you know, like the goblin shaman wasn't free. This was all add-on stuff.
Yep.
My point is actually specifically to AOS, where you have the catapult and with the catchweb spider shrine.
Yep.
But to my reading of the War Scroll, it doesn't say that the shaman has to have the catchweb spider shrine. It says mounted with the shaman, and then it says it may have a catchweb spider shrine or the catapult, at least to my reading.
I'll have to take a look at that.
I actually argued at Adepticon with Alex, who of course told me no, smartly, that I should be able to run a shaman with a catapult, just to add something a little bit different, a little bit more range firepower. And perhaps I'm wrong and everybody's going to yell at me, but oh well. So to my reading of the War Scroll, there are actually 3 options that you can field. Well, 4, I guess, because you can field it with the catapult, you can field it with the catapult and the shaman, and you can field it with the shaman and shrine.
Yeah, and you can just field it with none of those things. Like it can literally, and I believe if you actually look on the Arachnarok War Scroll itself, it actually gives the possibility of fielding it without goblins either. And so that is like a thing. Like if you didn't want goblins on it, you can just field it as the spider with no actual grots. So that's a possibility.
That's backed up as well by the actual sprue itself.
Yep.
I know Tom and I have talked about this before, but the Arachnarok spider itself, not any of the details, not any of the howdah, not any of the goblin sprue. The howdah, the goblins, the stumps that are around it are all on a separate sprue. And there's only 2 sprues in the kit. So you could just buy the sprue with the spider on it and do whatever you want to with it. And it's such a gorgeous, gorgeous sculpt.
Yeah, it is.
You can see, obviously, like you said, you can see all around that people have done amazing things with it.
So, so how do you rate any of these versions of it? Put it together. Like, let's assume that that's correct. So how are you rating the various versions of this thing as they are out there right now?
As they run, well, I'll just use Alex's or Adepticon because that's the only tournament I've been to in a while. The shaman with the catchweb spider shrine is the obvious standout. Being able to cast 2 spells instead of 1 is really nice. If you're able to run the shaman with the catapult, I could see some utility with that, just because you don't need 2 spells, perhaps. But being the only, he is just a great tank, and with the hero keyword, he gives you a lot of options. Obviously, because you can give him a command ability if you want to. You can give him Battle Brew, of course. Although I did consider giving him the ward save as well, because I thought that would be a really cool idea. More tanky, but in the end, the Battle Brew is just such a great option. It's, I hope it's one of those things that in GHB2 is going to be taken out or changed or something, because it's no fun having an auto option.
Yeah, it's just so good. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's so good, and especially on the Arachnarok.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
comes
for those of
down-
you guys that don't know, the Arachnarok has a base ability that on its big, like, Monster's Fang bite, which is where all of your mortal wounds are going to get spitted out from. On a 6-up, 6 or higher to hit, you just stop the attack sequence and you do a D3 mortal wounds. And with all of the combinations, like, you get double that from the spell and from the
you have +1 to the poison. You don't +1 to the hit, +1 to the poison.
To the range, yeah.
Command ability, and then you get doubled mortal wounds from the spell.
Yeah, so it can spit out just tons of mortal wounds on that bite. And Battle Brew is only helping that for those, because it's adding to the bonus to hit.
Well, especially with how many wounds it has. Oh, I take a mortal wound. Oh, goodness. I take 2 mortal wounds. Oh, well, right? But the bite doesn't reduce.
Right, the bite never loses its effectiveness, and that's the key. Is that, like, it's going to trigger on that all the way up, and so it's pretty ridiculous. Yeah.
Well, you hit on one of the points that I was actually going to talk about with this thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is that the spider itself is an interesting monster to me. He has a big pile of wounds, right? He's got the 14 number. He's on with, your greater demons and stuff like that, right? He has that really nice option that he can choose to move over the top of scenery as though it was not there, right?
Which is a great option.
It is, especially for things like retreating, right? Or charging or stuff like that. When you can sneak across things and hit people or run away. It's very potent. Here's my question. The wound chart that this thing has, like, if it has any sort of limitations, it is that it's not a very fast moving monster, right?
Sure.
Starting at like speed 8 and getting hit, that number gets hit on this thing's wound chart, right? So when this thing gets down there, it ends up at like a 4-inch, 3-inch movement. Yeah.
Still a 2d6 charge.
Sure, I understand. Sure.
And a destruction. Yep.
So that's my question. Its wound chart. I think a monster is often defined by its wound chart and what it loses as it gets wounded. Some monsters more or less can shake it off without problem. Some just don't even get, or some are absolutely crippled. The Chimera is a great example of a monster that just gets completely crippled by its wound chart, right? Like everything good about it dies the second it takes any number of wounds, basically. So what do you think of the wound chart on the big spider? Like, we obviously the move goes down. Its other items are the number of leg attacks and then the hit roll of the big fangs. Right.
Well, and that's the utility of it, is that even though it doesn't move very fast, it does have the destruction move. It still allows itself to get around, but the threat range isn't actually all that reduced because the movement isn't all that big to begin with. Right? You do lose 6 inches off of that, but it's 6 inches out of potentially, 8 plus 6 plus 2d6. Right? So that's a little over a quarter of its movement that you're going to lose. But that's only a quarter of its movement that you might lose, which is an amazing ability, especially for something that can do that much damage in close combat. And the other because it has the shaman on back, it doesn't lose its utility when it has low wounds, even out of combat. It's always going to be a threat.
All right, I take that.
The other thing I would add is that, like, the losing bonuses to hit, like losing your hit number, is an illusion on this monster.
Because you're just really fishing for the mortal wounds with the bonus.
Yes, and that, like, so at its worst, this thing just always does mortal wounds.
Sure.
Like, because it hits on a 5-up, and the general makes his mortal wound bite hit on a 5-up.
Yep.
So that never changes. Like, that never disappears, and then you're fishing for bonuses to hit. So Battle Brew, that 5-up is a 3-up auto mortal wounds.
The only real, and this is my nitpicky thing, is that you don't get a +1 to hit. You get a +1 to your poison.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
You've got a 5+ poison, but you hit on a 7+, which is just because you're against a Morn goal or you're against something that does a -1 to hit. And that's the major weakness in this army, as far as I'm concerned, is just simply that
the bravery.
Even the -1 to hit will just wipe out your mortal wound output.
Yes, but that's where I would push back and say, like, Lord of War and Battle Brew, you can pull +3 to hit pretty easily.
Yeah, but you can only do that on one of your Arachnaroks, right?
Sure.
Usually. So, I mean, and that is my personal preference, but it does present an issue for, the not 280 points of an army that has Battle Brew on it. And that's the other thing, is that it's only 280 points. Yeah, it's just kind of amazing how cheap this thing is for how much utility it has. Dan Heelan always talks about reach, and this thing has reach in spades in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
So we're going to come back later and talk about how we can pair this thing up with other, what can it work with? Because it's obvious that as a sub-faction alone, you're probably not getting the job done off these guys, right? Like, there's just not enough to the sub-faction that they can probably stay on their own. So we'll talk about some pairings. All right. So
at lower points.
At lower points?
1,000 points.
We're like,
brutal.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like, at 1,000 points. No, I mean, Paul's right. At 1,000 points, this army's rocking.
Sure.
Paul showed that by the fact that, didn't you win the 1,000-point Adepticon?
I got third at Adepticon in the first 1,000-point tournament.
Yeah, third.
And then I got destroyed by Ben Johnson, but it was amazing.
Yeah, and Paul ran all Spiderfang.
Right. Yeah, it was just 2 Arachnaroks, 2 units of 5. And there's just so much utility. And, there's an argument that if it was on a 4x4 board, it also would have been a completely different situation as well. And you're talking about zonal control with all these different armies. Arachnaroks have that. And because you can fit 3 comfortably, you have zonal control with a monster of 3 out of the 4 spaces.
Yep, that's true.
Well, and I have lots of thoughts about the 6x4 boards that the 1,000-point games were run on, because it certainly greatly weighted the advantage of certain armies, like what Ben was running. But that's probably a story for another time. I will say I firmly do believe 1,000-point games should be on 4x4 tables. So that's just when we're talking about space to fill the thing. Anywho, All right. So I totally accept. But I will say, at the 2,000 point, which is what we're normally thinking of when we're thinking about sketching out this army, right? I don't think there's enough there alone. But
especially without the battalion. I think if they still had the battalion, I think they could show up a little bit more competitively, but they don't have it right now.
And so we'll talk about some of the weaknesses preventing them to stay out. So let's move to the big boss, because he's been referenced a few times, right? So your Grot big boss on the gigantic spider. The sort of, to me, the weirdo of this whole group, just because he's that weird model.
Yeah, he's amazing.
No, I'm not doubting that. He's just the model you don't see that often, because he isn't the giant spider kit, right?
Yeah.
And he isn't the thing that came in the starter box that everybody has 7,000 of, right? So you have to go out and specifically really get this guy. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't. There's not a lot of them just floating around in the wild.
He's always been direct order, and the number of times that you actually see the model on the table, as opposed to a goblin on Shalob or a goblin on a 5th edition, Spider by GW, is not actually that high.
That's so true. I've had so many people look at that model and go, "Wow, that's a really awesome model.
Yeah.
Like, where'd you get that?" And I was like, GW.
Yeah, I have a bunch of conversion for the gigantic spider as chariots, and they're like, "Where did you get that spider from?" And I'm like, GW. It's one of the three boxes for this range. Yeah, you missed the wood. Plastic, got it.
Well, yeah, and I don't think that's unfair. I mean, that's just it. Like, I think a lot of people don't see it. That's exactly my point. But okay, this guy's the superstar. Sell us on why this guy's the superstar. Talk to us about the gigantic, or the big boss. Sorry,
Tom, you go first.
He's 100 points and he has a 4-up rerollable save, and he's not a monster. Can we just start
He has
there?
6 wounds.
He has 6 wounds.
Mhm.
So we have a 6.
And he has mortal wound output.
Yep, mortal wound output. He's just so good.
He has the spider ignore scenery rule.
Yep,
Right.
he has spider ignore scenery. He has a higher mobility than a dude on foot.
Yep.
And he's 100
Yep.
points. Did I mention he's 100 points?
He has 100 points. Yeah.
And he doesn't reduce his profile.
No.
Right.
No.
So he still gets the 4 spider attacks. He still gets the 4 spear attacks. And the 4+ rerollable save is just insane.
Yeah,
I mean,
because
like-
getting him to a 2-up rerollable is easy.
Yeah.
Put him on
'Cause he can go
terrain.
and cover, and then you give him Mystic Shield. Yep.
Yeah, and you give him Mystic Shield. And remember, you have Arachnaroks backing him up, and every Arachnarok probably has a shaman with 2 spells castable.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's
you
just- I
always
mean-
have somebody within range.
I don't know why the shield is a thing. But the man is an amazing. Everything else about this subfaction is completely drawn from the narrative. And then the hero, they're like, okay, he's got an amazing shield. Why? Because he has an amazing shield. And I'm like, great, that's fantastic. I love that.
And like any of the sort of characters that have the reroll all failed saves are immediately like super high value in my book, right? Like that is a very potent ability, especially
You ran
when
one
they
weekend.
don't have the monster keyword. What's that?
You ran one this weekend, didn't you?
Yeah, it's the same as the Chaos Lord on Demonic Mount, right? A heck of a lot cheaper than that guy.
And clocking in better wounds. He broadcast the bubble. Is an 8-inch bubble? Is that right, Paul?
Mhm.
Broadcast an 8-inch bubble that
Yep.
moves all of the mortal wound bites on all the spider units. So the entire faction, all the mortal wound triggers from 6 up to 5 ups.
Well, and that's a really interesting thing, actually, because when AOS dropped,
Yeah.
the ability did. He could pick one unit within 8 inches. And then when the compendium came out, they changed it. And it was every unit within 8 inches. And I don't know why it changed. I think it makes more sense and it works a lot better. But they and that's one of the things that people don't necessarily realize is that they've already updated this subfaction. Even though it just went from compendium, from release to compendium, it's been updated.
Yeah.
And let's not underestimate that change either. Like aura type broadcast abilities like that are so good. Where it's just like everybody in this range. And an 8-inch bubble coming off this guy, yeah, it's not huge, but it's also not small, right? Like you can be easily touching a lot of different units with an 8-inch bubble broadcast off of this base.
Did I mention that all of his attacks have Niggle and Rend?
He does have
Yes.
he does have rend on everything, which is impressive. Because most of the time with carrot monsters like this, example, the Lord on Demonic Mount, the Chaos Lord on Demonic Mount that was just referenced, that Demonic Mount does not have rend, right?
Nope. And he's
So
what,
this-
140?
He's 140, yeah.
Like this dude would take that guy to the house.
I suspect he would win the fight. Like if they're unbuffed, if we sent them against each other, I think this guy comes out alive. Yes. Which is funny to me. But yeah, he's a really interesting boss in that he is defensive enough for what he needs to be.
And he can get the Mortal Wounds amulet, the protection.
Right.
Mhm. The 4+.
Like
yeah.
the destruction that gives a 4+ against all mortal wounds.
Well,
which-
and yeah,
Good.
if you go back to the battalion thing, if you had the battalion, you could have an Arachnarok, a Battle Brew, and a boss with the 4+ amulet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So 4+ rerollable plus 4+ mortal wound save. Like that guy's not going anywhere.
Right. I agree. Well, that's the interesting part about him is you mentioned the not a monster, which is always good. Like to me, those best generals are those guys that have like the slightly higher wound that are on some kind of mobile mount that don't gain the monster keyword, but have like some kind of inflated save and mobility capability that live in that mid-range zone, right? Where they're a general that can still take cover and isn't the most threatening thing on the table or whatever. Fairly defensive. He's fairly mobile. He's fairly offensive, and he's got a good, solid command ability. Right? Like again, I don't know if any of these are best in class, but they're all good.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he's 100 points.
And he just slipped under the radar. Just completely slipped under the radar.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we
He's
can
got
talk
an
about
amazing
this now. We can talk about this now because the GHB2 is at the printers.
Right.
Yep.
You're saying they're not going to watch this show and be like, oh, crap, make him 160. What were we thinking?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, he's 140. Like, let's not make bones about this. Like, he's a 140 point model.
Sure.
Like 140 to 160.
Honestly, I mean, that's one of the only odd thing about building a list with this. The Arachnarok is 280. At 300, it's still a good deal.
Yep.
But those 20 points, you can't do anything with them. And you have to
Right.
take 5 to get to an even 2,000. Which, and honestly, that's actually something that I kind of enjoy. Triumph. Right? Because everybody's building their list to 2,000. And if you include one Arachnarok, you're immediately down 20, 2, 40, 3, 60. Nobody's down 60 points on their tournament list. And that Triumph is a big deal when you can, reroll one die for D3 times 2 mortal wounds on a 5+.
Sure.
Right.
I mean, and that's part of what's amazing about this army as well, in my opinion.
So let's talk about the final guy. Our
Mhm.
final contender out of the existing list, which is the basic Spider Riders themselves, right? We can't leave behind without talking about the only thing actually counting as the army in this army, I suppose.
The only non-hero.
Right. The only well, like we said, you can feel the spider is just the spider with goblins, whatever. But yes, it can get the hero keyword. So the only thing that doesn't gain the hero keyword is the Spider Riders. So who wants to take this one first? Which one of you two would like
That's
to
all
talk
you,
about
Paul.
I mean, it's cavalry, so it's automatically 2 wounds. That's great. They have the same mobility. I mean, yes, you get 5 for 100, so 20 points a model is not cheap, but it's not all that expensive.
Mhm.
But they're the battle line unit that can keep up with the rest of the army.
Yep.
And shield your Arachnaroks with 15 Spider Riders, right? You can do so much with them because they are exactly as mobile as the entire rest of the army.
Yeah.
I mean, army that I have seen run in tournament play where every model has the same rules, right? You don't have to worry about what's going on because everything starts at 8. Everything's got the destruction move. Everything's got the chart. I mean,
Everything's
and,
ignoring scenery, right?
Exactly.
Everything's doing the mortal wound, spider bite. Like, yes, like down the line, you're looking at a very thematically similar army from move to attack to
They're all
functioning
doing
utility.
the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, kind of.
Yep.
Like, not the same, because there are some off units that have, other utility, but yes.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, the shooting is not terrible. I mean, that's 5+5+, but it's something.
Yeah, I look at it like just it's shots. It's shots that are there. There, you don't bank on them to do anything, but if you can put more stuff in the air and act in another phase, why is it ever a bad thing, right? I don't.
Well, and the thing is, because they're 5+5+, everybody goes, "Oh, it's a terrible shot." Yeah, it's 5+5+, but you can run 45 Spider Riders, and then you've got the 3 Arachnaroks, and they've got shots too, right? You're upwards of 60 shots.
You're gonna put
60 shots, regardless. Yeah, regardless of the rolls, is gonna do something.
Yep.
I mean, it has as much utility as the rest of the army, and for a battle line unit, that's pretty amazing.
So now that we know the force, what's our common? Like, you're going to combine this with something else, okay? Let's assume we want to combine this. We look
Paul's
at it.
not. Paul's gonna run mono Spiderfang.
Sure.
Well, actually, at last Gen Con, or last Adepticon, I didn't run mono Spiderfang. Now this was pre-GHB, battle line, etc. But what I actually did was I ran 1,000 points of Spiderfang and I ran 1,000 points of Gitmob. Now every model was converted using the Arachnarok models, but I actually had a lot of fun running 6 chariots and Grom and 10 Spider Riders. because he adds a different utility to the list, right?
Yeah.
The one thing that the Arachnaroks can't usually do is get anywhere near a first turn charge. Wolf chariots get to run and charge, standard. So you get the destruction move, you get the move, you get the run, and not a reducible profile, and then you get the charge. And if you're running them with Grom, they reroll all failed hits. And are their attacks amazing? No. But are you going to be able to get that little unit that's going to shoot wounds off of it, the Arachnarok? Are people going to be like, wait, where did this come from? Yes, they were, for sure. And the fast attack option for something that typically is not.
Well, there's value to locking people, like locking units into combat turn one. Like you don't need to do anything with your unit. My Chaos Warriors are evidence of that. Like most of the time, my whole goal was just to lock somebody into melee combat. I don't care if I kill you or not. That doesn't matter. That means that you can't go get on a point.
Yep.
Or if you do want to go get on a point, you have to disengage, which means those Skyfires that you have aren't shooting this round.
Yeah.
And so, like, just locking people into combat has real value.
And I mean, when I read it, it was so much fun because you've got you at the point, obviously pre-GHB 2,
right,
or GHB, but you had these two completely separate things that basically were completely complementary. But they're all cheap, right? I mean, like, you're running units of 3 chariots. That's a lot of fun. Like, Grom isn't that expensive, and he's got his little regen, and he's got his, he's got a lot of different options. And so a ton of fun running them with the new battle line only. If you do Spiderfang, obviously you can't run them the same. You need to add some battle line in. But I mean, the other option that I actually am going to do eventually as well is I'm going to run Gordrak. And I want to run it with the battalion for the Spiderfang. And just, run it with the Battle Brew on one Arachnarok and just throw everything in turn one because it gives the Spiderfang that ability to get that first turn charge.
Yeah.
And he's a lot of points. But, I mean, you can't underestimate the damage that those guys can do. Mortal wound output that just gets better and better is just, it's amazing.
All right, Tom, what about you? What's your add to? Let me see if I can think here. Tom, are you trying to shove in like Stonehorns and Thunder Tusks or Cunning Rucks? Which one are you going to try to shove in here?
Cunning Rucks. That's not
okay.
even.
Gotcha.
Like I'm that douchey guy. No, and actually, what I would so I would go either Cunning Rucks and keep the Savage theme like across the board.
Sure, because it seems to fit.
Yeah, like with all feathers and stone weapons. And you could, like, there's 2 ways you go with that. Either, so you do 2 Arachnaroks and with a big boss and 10 Spider Riders. So that's your Spiderfang contingent. Okay. If you can run same items, both the Arachnaroks take Battle Brews, the boss takes the Talisman of Protection. You're getting 3 items because you're running 2 battalions. You're running a Cunning Ruck, which is super, super cheap. Okay. And so you're running a Cunning Ruck, and that's in all of your battle lines going to be Savage Orcs. So that'll all be a single drop. And then your other battalion is either going to be a Tiefruck, which is the Savage Big Stabbas, like the guys that carry the Big Stabbas, like two of those units. You could run forward. And those are fairly cheap as well, so to be like an anti-monster option. But the build that I'm more inclined to want to do is the running that same and this is the list that I've been trying to tweak to get it just that sweet spot. But to run so the same Spiderfang with the Cunning Ruck core, which is like the 40 arrow boys, the 3 blocks of 10 Savage Orcs, the big boss. And then for the final battalion to run an Iron Fist with 3 packs of 5 brutes each. And so then you have like the triple threat you have a huge mortal mortal wound output, high mobility in the Arachnarok block. You have the bodies from the Savage Orcs, which are 70 orcs, 40 of them being Arrow Boys, and then the 3-pack of 5 brutes each, and then the brutes are high mobility as well because they're able to destruction move and then Iron Fist move across the board. And all of those are bringing their own threat, their own different threat, and they're maintaining like a high threat, you know, for this type of list. Now,
it puts a lot of pressure on, certainly.
Yeah, it puts a lot of pressure.
Ways.
Yes. And like the target priority is very diffuse because you have to deal with a lot of very significant things in that list. You have the 40 block of Arrow Boys. You have 2 Arachnaroks, which are a problem. You have the big boss, which is buffing the Arachnaroks, which inherently isn't a problem, but he is a problem. And then you have the sets of the brutes, which you just can't ignore. I mean, a bunch of brutes like that, like you just can't ignore them coming crashing in. So, anyways, that's probably how I would run it. If in a perfect world, if we got our battalion fixed, I would kill out the Ironjawz out of that list, and I would go with the battalion, a third Arachnarok, and obviously, like I'd split up my Spider Riders instead of a unit of 10, like 3 units of 5 probably, and I would single drop, or it would be a 3-drop list. Or no, is the big boss in that battalion? Yeah, the big boss is in that battalion, so it would be a 2-drop list.
See, I think if we get that battalion back, that honestly just adds so much utility to the list because it makes the Spider Riders immune to battle shock if they're within 8 inches of the Arachnarok.
Yeah.
You actually lose the vast majority of your output is from losing those Spider Riders. Their save goes from 5+ to 6+ when they get below 5. Number 2, if you're running 10 or if you're running 15 Spider Riders, you've got a lot of reach.
Yeah.
As well, still being within 8 inches of the Arachnarok. And I mean, battle shock is a thing that actually reduces your army the most. Because, you know, I mean, you're running 7 Spider Riders, that's 14 wounds.
Yeah.
Which is what you're absolutely going to be doing, or 15. And you're losing, say, 4, 5, 6 to battle shock every turn, which is exactly what happens because you don't have Inspiring Presence. You get Inspiring Presence on everything. And you get extra poison on everything. And, you know, like, everything works fine. It's just, honestly, that battalion, I think, is what, the wording on the battalion is what actually makes it not a top-tier army.
Yeah.
Point. You have, right? But if you can't get to the Arachnaroks in combat, because you've got a bunch of Spider Riders that don't go away from battle shock, you're not getting to your goal, right? You have to have a ton of shooting. And if you have a ton of shooting, you just run everything forward and mow it down with mortal wounds because you're not going to have an amazing defense. Pretty well. Is it going to be taken out? Yeah, if you have a high mortal wound output from distance, there's not much you can do about that. But that's a problem for Stormcast, for so many other armies.
Sure.
Right? But if you're having mortal wound output from range models too, it's not going to be cheap. And so every model they lose is going to be a huge deal.
Yeah, so you know that's my thought as we move into what we'd love to see, like in a potential release for these guys. Because here's the thing, I think that these guys will eventually get a Beast Claw or a Savage Orc style release, right? I just feel like they've dropped them so often in the narrative that what we're going to get is, you know, some kind of either book for them, or, you know, with maybe one additional kit, maybe a new build option, right? Like you talked about how the Arachnarok, the way it is, lends it to being built in different ways, right? Yep. Mm-hmm. It would be easy to add characters, like to add another character that would just be like a normal hero on regular Spider that you just build out of the Spider kit, you know, out of the like regular Spider Riders. There's lots of ways you could go with it. You could have just the spider itself, blah, 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 blah. They could add one new kit and really just explode this army with a couple different build options.
Yep.
And it seems like one of those low touch armies like they've been fond of doing, you know, Flesh Eater Courts, Savage Orcs, Beast Claw, etc. Right?
Things that were compelling on the glance, they're compelling.
Right. They have a cool, unique aesthetic. They get like, and again, these guys have been dropped over and over and over again in the story. I have to feel like they're going to get that eventually. And here's the thing: if that were to happen, okay, and we're talking big if here, but if it were to happen, which I would put my money on in the next, like, I would say in the next year and a half, I would put my money on it happening. Let me just say that.
I thought it would have happened by now, but I thought we would have had a goblin sub-faction by now. A Grot sub-faction. We just haven't. I honestly still think, or elves, yeah, seriously. I honestly still think that they're probably going to be the first Grot sub-faction.
Agreed. And well, that's the thing. Like you mentioned that you made your throwaway elf joke. But the trick about the elves is they're not going to do the elves until they do the full elves. Like that is to say, elves are going to come out just like dwarves. We didn't get like some partial janky dwarf release, right? Where we used a bunch of old kits. We got like Fire Slayers. Boom. This is a whole new thing that exists now. KO. Boom. This is a whole new thing that exists now. It's clear with those kinds of races, they're taking those totally new directions.
Like flagship. Yeah.
Yeah, whereas with the destruction stuff, they've already got good individualized concepts in there, right? When they're different than just, these are goblins, these are orcs. They already have weird takes on them hidden in the forces. And that's what they've been doing, is just building them out, right? Here's the weird savages. Here's the icy mammoth riders, you know, and the spider riding goblins is the perfect fit for that. It's completely aligned with their previous strategy. So, and as you said, there's clearly a couple people in the design studio that really, really love these spiders. And as we all know, the design studio, like the artists and the sculptors, drive a lot of the release schedule. Not all of it, but a lot of it, right? So if that were to happen, I've got to think the battalion thing, like the battalion problem goes away in spades, right? Because if you had a book release about this in any way, you're just going to have like 80, but having too many battalions is going to suddenly become your problem. Probably. But at the very least, you would see, you know, there would be, let's say worst case, there's 4 or 5 battalions in there. You know, like you end up with a KO style 4 or 5 battalions. It's still more than the one you're hoping to get fixed right now.
Well, yeah, like, but that's the thing. It's like, I would just take the one.
Sure.
Like,
and that's my point.
That's doing everything I wanted to do. Just give me that.
Sure.
Yeah. Here's the repeated Warhammer TV plea. Please just fix that battalion wording.
Yes, we have
take 3 seconds.
Paul and I have regularly, like, I am sure Rob is like, dear God, I wish Paul and Tom would just stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like when they did the battle report with all the Spiderfang Grots, like it was just so funny because like the chants were incessant for like 2.5 hours of please fix the battalion. Please fix the battalion.
Is this like your equivalent of Carthage must be destroyed? Is that what it is? Yeah.
Yes.
I figured. All right. So, but let's imagine this world. What do you feel you would add to the army? What are the current places it's not, it does have holes, or that you would like to see? Battalion aside, let's set that one aside. We know that's on the list. Okay. What else would you want to see out of a kit, a new model, an alternate build, whatever, anything like that? Chart out to me some items you'd love to see in there. Paul, I'll let you take this one first.
Okay. So I'm going to start with a battle line unit. And what I would like,
or conditional battle line
unit, number 1. On number 2, what I would actually do is I would hark back to, there's a character called Snagla.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty terrible. But what he could do is you could attach him to a unit of Spider Riders, and that unit of Spider, right? So I ran a 30 block of Spider Riders and ambushed in Snagla with a 30 block of Spider Riders. And they were terrible. But nobody knew that because nobody had ever faced it before.
Yeah.
Right? But like design, they've done a really good job with the spiders. They've done a really good job with the goblins. But what they're missing is they're missing the webs. Right? There are webs all over these miniatures. They've got them all over the Arachnarok. They've got them all over the back of the gigantic spider throne. everywhere. And so my idea would be basically just you've got a drop unit of, say, 5 spiders. Drop 9 inches outside of enemy unit and, go at it. But they don't have poison, right? Their thing is that they've got the webs.
Mm-hmm.
They just are able to do something, right? They're able to take that problem of you've got to get across the board, you can't do it in one turn, and gives you something to be able to do something with. Or at the very least, makes your opponent spread out his deployment so that he can't concentrate all fire on one Arachnarok to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
We need to add a new kit for.
I love this idea because here's the thing about it. I think one of the things missing in the army is unexpected mobility, right? Like unexpected mobility is a big powerful thing within current AOS. So an ambush style character or something that would allow them to come in like that would be awesome. And I love even more the idea of utilizing the webs, which is totally in theme.
Yep.
And the mechanic it's playing at is reducing enemy mobility, right? Like you show up next to the Skyfires with a throwaway unit and you poop on them, and then they can't, they can't move the next round or something, like whatever. They, like whatever.
Can't pass over them.
Yep.
Yeah, like whatever. Fly. Yeah, you could use the old giant spider rule from Magic from like the initial sets, right? They had giant. They were like, we got to figure out how green deals with flying enemies, and they were like, simple, giant spider, can block as though it had flying. Just like
exactly. You give them the web ability.
Yes, there's so many different cool ways you can go with it.
So let me take that and build on one more. And the funny thing is, they have this tech in the actual models themselves right now. And what I mean by that is breeds. They need different breeds of spiders doing different things. And if you go, Paul obviously knows this. If you go crack open the Spider Rider kit, there are 5 breeds of spiders. We've talked about
not the Battle for Skull Pass one, but the actual box itself.
The actual box itself. Because there are the Death's Heads, which everybody's seen. There's the Wolf Spiders, which are like the striped back ones.
The zigzag back, those are in the Battle for Skull Pass.
Yeah, there's the spine backs, which aren't in the Battle for Skull Pass. There's spine backs have spines coming out. There are lava backs, which are like a bulbous with like lava crackling patterns on the butts. And then the 5th one is what's the 5th spider? There's a 5th one.
Honestly, I don't own. Well, I recently just finally got my first actual box of Spider Riders. All my Spider Riders are Battle for Skull Pass.
Yeah.
Honestly, no.
Yeah, so there's a 5th breed, but I say all of that to say, like when I started doing them, I picked up on that right away, and I painted all of them different. And so, like my wolf spiders are like in browns and blacks. Yeah. My Death's Heads are all in purples and pinks. And so I went like the different breeds with the different colors, and I let the goblins themselves unify the army. Does that make sense? So the greens and the pinks that are on the main goblins are what became my unifying factor, not the spiders themselves. And I let the different breeds be different. And I think that they just, like I did that with the models themselves and the aesthetics that were already there. They would just have to go like one step farther and integrate that into the rules. You have different breeds doing different things. You have ambushers, and you have maybe fast runners, and you have webbers, and you have all these different kind of spider units doing different things. So that's the first thing I'd say. The other thing that I want to see, I want to see some swarms. And instead of like a bunch of foot soldiers, like a bunch of foot goblins, which I could go with and I'm okay with. I mean, I bought like a bunch of Howdah kits. It was probably Paul and I always like bidding on the same stuff, trying to get those Howdah goblins on foot. I have my units of guys on foot, but I think more than that, like I would love to see, and I made a bunch, for those that know my Spiderfang collection, like I made a 40-some model block of like spider herders, like squig herders that I use them for squig herder proxies. And it was just this huge horde, this big swarm of spiders. And I think that if they go for foot soldiers, I think that's the way to go. Is like they go for a bunch of baby spiders or young spiders.
That way you've got the whole thing from tiny up to very, very massive.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, you
See-
you lean into the spider aspect of it, not the goblin aspect of it.
And what I agree with that idea, but I would do it a different way. And the way that I would do it is that the big disappointment, useless thing in the current rules is the catapult. Right? There's no reason to take the catapult. It doesn't hit. It does you 3 wounds, but like it doesn't really hit. And it's only got, it doesn't really do something. So what I want is I want them to take that already design that they've incorporated into the Arachnarok and have that web ball that they throw scatter into spider swarms. Right?
Ah, nice. Okay, I dig it. Yes,
but you can
alternate setup.
Again, extending the range of the army with existing models that they already have, right? So then you go forward, and again, these spiders don't have poison because they're not fully grown. But if you actually read the background for 5th, etc., the small spiders are the really more hallucinogenic ones.
That would be
and
awesome.
So my idea for the rule is you run them into units and the unit kills them, right? Because they have to, or they stop.
Yeah.
If the unit kills a spider swarm, they get a token next to the unit. And all the wound rolls of 1 for that unit for the next round, just 1 round, cause wounds on them, right? Because they're hallucinating. They basically cause them to attack itself.
It's fun.
That's just a simple idea because I want them to incorporate the models that are already there, right? And like I said before, it's all about getting that reach and making that a little bit interesting. And I love the being launched and surviving, right? We've already got a Doom Diver of a unit being launched and splatting, being launched, and then these 3 spider swarms come out of it.
That'd be awesome.
I do love that idea. I love the hallucinogen idea too. Like that is a good idea. Like, and again, all of this is what I love about this is there's so many other places to explore that are just in theme. Like we're not building on some incredible new tech or taking the army in some radical direction, right? Like this is just all in the theme of what's already there.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the spider like variety idea or breed idea or whatever could be done in so many different ways, right? And if it's in the kit itself, that's even better. I did not realize because I think I've only ever seen the ones from Skull Pass. I didn't bother to know. I noticed you had used different bodies, but I never picked up that they were in the action. That was from the kit, not the Skull Pass ones. Like that would be so easy to tease that out in different ways, right? Like it could be options on the scroll, it could be battalion options, it could be both, right? And just all these things could just play out so easily. And again, we haven't added a kit in there, and yet, boom, suddenly there's tons more options, right?
So I would say the letdown of the range right now is the basic Spider Rider box, right? I think, Tom, you would probably agree with me.
Yeah.
Those goblins sitting on the back of the spiders, they're just not really kind of working it anymore. They've been monoposed for so long, and everything else in the range, and then all the ranges is so dynamic. Just take it, and I've never actually bought the Spider Rider kit, like I said. So I assume that the spiders are in the sprue with the other goblins, right? Itself. So what you do is you just get that mold for Battle for Skull Pass, and you print off those 10 spiders, which have those amazing bases, right? And then you add the goblin sprue from the Arachnarok. You just take 2 existing sculpts that you already have, you put them in a box together, you sell them for $35, $40. Got 10 goblins that are dynamic, that are interesting. You've got a hero that you can put on a cavalry. You've got realizes the whole range. I spent 5 years buying enough Arachnarok goblins to be able to put them on my basic Spider Riders because they look so much more amazing. And what you also do is then you have all bits and those extra pieces of terrain that are in the kit itself. And honestly, I mean, who wouldn't want an army that you buy the army and the terrain comes with it? Right? I mean, like there's so much that you can do. They fit around the trees. They fit around every basic piece of terrain that we have right now, as far as like the natural pieces, and it would look so amazing and be so interesting. And you don't need to do a resculpt.
Yep.
Technically doing a rebox, but you're not actually taking any designer time to do it. And you just do that with the basic Spider Rider kit. Hero, I mean, would it be nice to have a resculpt? Yes, but that's a lot to ask, right? And it's a gorgeous model anyway. Like, that model is amazing. Then you put an Arachnarok in there, right? And you've got a getting started box. You've got 20 Arachnarok goblins. You've got an Arachnarok. You've got a Spider Rider, and you've got a hero on Gigantic Spider. They'll sell like hotcakes, right?
Yeah.
In an $85 box, that would just be insane. Nobody, like, I mean, see that staying in stock, period. Even though it's got a resin cast in it, that resin cast is fantastic.
Sure, and to be fair, there have been, you know, those kinds of resin casts in other you know, big bundle boxes that have come out in various ways or stuff like that. So it's not like that's beyond.
It's not unknown, right?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. They've shown that they're willing to throw those into some of the package deals of varying sizes, right? So it doesn't seem like a difference to me. And I agree. Like, it's not like those things are moving right now. Right. Yep. So, like, why not put this stock in somewhere where people are going to be snatching it up en masse? It just makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, I think that's some good ideas. Well, as we come to a close here, I'll turn it over one more time. So, Paul, Tom, as we close out, any final thoughts? What you'd want to see? What your hopes are? That kind of thing. Anything else you'd want to add in?
Obviously, it'd be nice to have a plastic Gigantic Spider.
Mm-hmm.
The sculpt as is. It'd be nice to have a plastic one just for converting. The spiders lend themselves to converting.
I'd love for them to go like a Vargolf route. And do something like, is it not the Vargolfs, the ones, the 3 model, like the Crypt Horror, like whatever those,
the Vargeists.
Like, the Vargeist there. Like in the Flesh Eater box where like you have like 3 models, but like one of them can be turned into a hero.
Yep.
I would love to have seen them do something like that where you could have like either the spiders alone, maybe with like be able to swap the breed by like some back pieces, make the spiders look different, to having like some mounted cav, some like heavy cav, like 4 wound, 5 wound heavy cav, like larger spiders, or maybe some of them be heroes. So like one kit then can like split into a bunch of different kits.
Yeah.
Like that would be a neat, like with Flesh Eater Courts, where they only have to design one kit and they can fill a bunch of different holes in the army, including a new big boss, like gigantic big boss. So that's what I would say.
I dig it. All right. So see, look, we got through a whole episode of talking about Spiderfang Grots, and I didn't get freaked out once. That's nice. We got that going for us. I like these ideas. Steal these ideas from us, GW. That's what we're saying. All right. All right. So very good. Paul, buddy, thank you very much for coming on the show. This has been awesome. We're going to have you back certainly in the future. Especially if that release happens. You bet your butt. Bet your bottom dollar you are booked on the show the week after that book happens. Like, just put it down now, okay? We'll have you back otherwise.
All screaming. First 7 minutes, all screaming. Then move on.
But mark it in the diary now. It's happening. If that release happens, you better be available that week. Move everything else. Clear the calendar. All right. But for all of you out there who are watching, thank you very much. We certainly appreciate it. And as always, we'll see you next Wednesday.